Hello again. Over the last several videos, I've been building out new VMs that we might need for modules 4 and 5. What you see in front of you on my screen is everything I have built. Um, I've got my Windows 10 client. I got the Debian client we built in Module 1. I've got the Debian server. I've got the Debian infrastructure server we introduced in Module 3. I've got my Ubuntu desktop, my Ubuntu server, my Kali 2020. None of these are running. And with the video upload I've got going on another screen and a couple of browser windows, I'm already using 8 gigs of RAM. So, in order to allow myself the potential, and it's not necessarily going to work all that well if I do it, the potential to fire all of these up at once, say put them all in a LAN segment together, sandbox and air gap them, and then have them interact as a network, I might pretty well max my memory. So in order to alleviate that possibility just a little bit, I've actually I've made the decision to take all of my VMs down to 1 and only 1 gig of RAM. Now, some of these will not run very well. I expect Windows 10 will run fairly painfully. Debian and Kali and some of the rest of it will probably handle that a little better, particularly if you haven't installed everything in the kitchen sink. And now, the thing I want to show y'all now is our final VM, essentially. Now, if you have to build a few others along the way, that's fine. Just you don't run all of them at the same time. Our final VM is what we would call the Metasploitable framework. There is a tool built into Kali called Metasploit. It is essentially a PostgreSQL database with a command line front end. And that database is full of vulnerabilities and exploits, so that you can basically call up the code that you want to inject onto your target. Say after you've done Nmap, you've determined what vulnerabilities it might have. Say it's got an open SSH port, and oh, by the way, it's also running SSH version 1, which is vulnerable compared to version 2. Or you see VSFTP and you know, oh, there's a way to break into VSFTP. Or Windows 10, and oh, by the way, I can shove a remote access Trojan or a backdoor in through, say, the Open NetBIOS port if it's got network discovery turned on. Or you could compromise a Samba server by using the NetBIOS port, depending on what you want to do. There's a lot of stuff in Metasploit. Now, the problem is that in order to practice these skills, you kind of have to have something that you can shoot at, as it were. But if you don't know what you're shooting at, you never know if you're hitting it. So they created what we call the Metasploitable framework. This is a softened version of Linux, as opposed to what you really want to accomplish at the end of all of this is a hardened version of Linux with things like AppArmor and SE Linux and all of that. An implementation of Linux, a VM, which is not designed to be deployed into the real world or on bare metal hardware. It is only a target, so you can practice breaking into stuff, with doors unlocked and passwords left to default and ports open and all of it. So what we're going to do different here, up until this point, we've been building our VMs from an ISO image. Because those VMs were more or less simulating real-world hardware, real-world installations. You would go to the machine with a USB key or an optical disk loaded with the ISO image that you want to, with an ISO image of the operating system you want to load, and you go from there. This is different. Now, the first thing, of course, to do is go grab it. And this is actually, I'll show you actually the Kali web page first. Uh, OffSec produced Kali. They were a pen testing and vulnerability assessment firm first. Now they've also turned themselves into a training firm. So there's a lot of information on how to use this. They have their own set of certifications, in point of fact. If you look at the Kali downloads page, you'll see references to the certifications you can get and other flavors of Kali. Like I said in a previous video, there are versions of Kali pre-built as for VirtualBox and for VMware as open virtualization appliances, OVF. The OVF is the open virtualization format. OVA is the open virtualization appliance. Not to be confused with an anime OVA, which is an original video animation. Anyway, so we've got our Kali, which is our attacker, and our victim, our Metasploitable. And so Metasploitable, so we want to use, as it says, we never want to expose Metasploitable on an untrusted network. We want to use it in NAT or host-only mode. We could also set this up for a LAN segment, provided, of course, that you've got something on your LAN segment to hand out DHCP addresses in lieu of the DHCP that the hypervisor itself will provide. So you can't. Of course, the other option, if DHCP is not working, is to get into Metasploitable, use the other skills you've already developed, and statically address your target. So anyway, Metasploitable is on SourceForge, which is here. SourceForge is one of those sites like, and I don't know how current Freshmeat is anymore. 10, 15 years ago, SourceForge and Freshmeat and GNU Savannah were kind of the places to go to look for new software or more recent releases. And I'm sorry that SourceForge is advertising Microsoft Azure. Let me make that go away. I did not want to show you ads right now. Okay, so that's gone. Okay, so anyway, these days, a lot of what used to happen on SourceForge and Freshmeat both now happens via GitHub because the state of the art has moved. Okay, and good grief, go away. Stop selling me things. Anyway, so we've got this Metasploitable framework. I'm not actually going to download it because I already have. So you would click this button, you get a zip file. That zip file shows you this. And so this is my VM's ISO. I went ahead and put the directory that contains this OVF file in my ISOs directory because it's more or less the same thing. It's not the image, but it's the appliance. If you go look in there, dig down a little bit, you'll see what looks for all the world like a standard VM image. It's actually got a lock file on it, interestingly enough. So let me go the long way with this. Actually, interesting. Hold on. Okay, so I have sanity checked myself. I looked at the original contents of that zip file, and yes, there is a VMX file in there. It really is a VMware appliance. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go to File, New Virtual Machine. Actually, not that. File, VM, yeah. Actually, what I'm going to do is open this virtual machine because I don't need to create it from another file. I have this Metasploitable directory, Metasploitable 2 Linux, and there's a VMX file for Metasploitable. And I click Open. and it has 8 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of hard drive space, half a gig of memory. The default login is MSFadmin, so you have to do anything sudo related, you can do that. So what I can do is power it on. And it's already ready to go. Okay, and if it asks you, say, copied. So we're not really installing this so much as firing it up. So it is going to load grub. That is an older flavor of grub. And let me, while I'm in the background, let me fire up my Kali machine. Welcome to grub. It's starting up. And I'm going to go ahead and fire up my Linux client as well. And of course, surprise, surprise, interesting. As you'll notice, there's a countdown on this BIOS simulation for my Debian client because I put the 10-second BIOS delay in. You can do that because it's a VMX file, it's a text file, you can edit it, you can add the delay if you need to. So this is my Debian. I'm probably going to end up, and it's still running 4.9. So you've got different VMs running different kernel versions. So Kali is booting, Metasploitable is booting. Interesting, it's doing FS check. The purpose of FS check is to check the file system, as the name suggests. It's got AppArmor coming up. I'm interested. It'll be interesting to see how many holes this thing has got in it. I think it's got quite a lot of them, in point of fact. So with things like SE Linux and AppArmor involved, but also a severely deliberately compromised system, the tools are there, but they haven't been applied correctly. So Kali is loading, and I'm going to pause this because it's going to take both of these a couple minutes to load. Okay, and we're back. And we're back. As you can see, I do not have a GUI. And think for a minute. As you can see, it's got a lot open. More holes than you would ever want to find on the same system. So I'm going to try this again in just a second from the Kali side to see how bad this really is. And I'm in the 31 range, surprise, surprise. I've also fired up my infrastructure server in the back end to make sure it's okay. You know, I might flip all of this into a LAN segment right now. I'll be back.